Hey, so
Hey,
hello and
hello.
welcome.
Thank you so much.
Hello and welcome everyone. We'll moderate this as a bit of a merry-go-round between people. We'll talk a little bit about the book at hand, but also a little bit about epigenetics, for which Swati, who is a doctoral student at ISC, has also joined us. But just to kick it off, my name is Isaac. I'm a I'm a founder of a startup called Ivory. We work in the space of detecting early cognitive decline. Um, I'm just a reader, like most of you, I believe, and I also like to play tennis to stay fit. But that's it about me. What I thought we could do, just so that we get to know each other a little better, and I think just the fact that readers have joined on a weekday on a 6 p.m. call is actually reason enough to know each other better. So why don't we just go around the room a bit? Tell us where you're joining from. And I'm not interested in knowing what you do, but I'm definitely interested in knowing what's one book you would recommend to the group. And again, it may or might not be in the longevity space. I think longevity space will always obviously constrict our choices for this exercise. So yeah, if I can just maybe call out a few people. Swati, do you want to go start? I think you're on
Sorry,
mute.
I was on mute. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
on mute. Yeah, hi. My name is Swati, and I'm a fourth year doctoral student in IIC, and I'm working on the epigenomic part of the longevity initiative. But today, as we are having a book club meeting, so actually everyone has recommended different books in the group today. I saw so the Song of Cells one is so one of my favorite. I have read the half of it. I'm still on my way to finish. So maybe the next book club meeting I will be a little bit ahead because this
Sure.
book club meeting Why We Age I have not read yet, but I
That's all right.
watched couple of interviews of Venki, and he described the book in detail in one of YouTube video, which was 1 hour, where he went to Harvard Medical School and was explaining the book. If someone wants to have a fast read through, can check that YouTube video. And one more book is I think from Professor Robert from Stanford. So I forgot the title, but I'll get back in the WhatsApp group. So it talks about that how epigenomics control before the birth in utero, how the things define us, like not just epigenomic stress and lot of stuff. And it's very important because now it talks about the spectrum of sexuality and how we are evolving as a new generation and why we are seeing so much differences in heterogeneity in the population and why so much phases we are coming to know. So that book is really interesting. I'll just suggest in the book club
Okay.
group. So yeah,
Thank
that's
you.
all from my side.
So Ramya, should we hear from you?
Yes, I mean, this is just intro, right?
Yeah, just intro and
Okay.
your last one book that you would recommend.
Oh, one book that I'd recommend. That's a very difficult question. So, my name is Suramya. I'm from the Indian Institute of Science. I'm a postdoc there, and I'm also the lead coordinator for the Longevity India initiative, where we do a bunch of cool things, including this book club. And one book that I would recommend is, my God, that's a very difficult question because I have like tons
Okay, one
of
book you
books to
read
read.
this year that you would recommend. One favorite read this year.
I think that would have to be My Father's Brain by
Okay,
Sandeep Johar. That is his story with his father's Alzheimer's disease. So I think that was a really good read for me this year.
okay, got it. Madhur, can we go to you? What you do and one book you recommend, like quick 30 seconds.
Yes, so I'll shoot the book first off. It's Determined by Robert Sapolsky. He talks a lot about do we have free will or not, and I really like his argument.
Yep.
Um, I think Swati was, yeah, she was referring to Behave, which was the previous book that he wrote. So
Yeah.
my name is
Now I
Madhur,
remembered.
and and I am calling from Bhopal. I'm slightly away in a forest outside of Bhopal. We run a forest therapy center called Mood Forest, where we work on longevity and happiness. So we do residential programs and we coach people in that. By training, I'm a clinical
Good.
psychologist, and yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Madhur. Jason, I see you next on my screen. You're on mute.
Can you hear me then?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I wasn't hoping my name's gonna be called out first, the first time in the session. Okay, so
Sorry, your
the
voice
book,
is coming muffled, Jason. Voice is coming muffled, yeah.
Is it better or is it
Yeah,
still
slightly better, yes.
Okay, so maybe the headphone might not that clear, but this is the book I'm reading. It's called Why Loiter. It's
Violet.
been it's a book about it's like a study done by three writers about the risk women face on the streets of Bombay. Very interesting book to kind of read. And again, it's kind of off to what we're discussing here, but I'm just kind of learning some interesting book titles. Thanks for the
Sorry, your
invitation.
voice is going trailing off again, but we got Violet.
Yeah. Okay. And who am I? I run a creative ad agency in Bombay. It's called Motley, and yeah, I'm trying to kind of build something in the health space too. Yeah, to talk in
Okay.
detail.
All right. Thank you. I see Abhishek next. Abhishek, could you go next? I think you might need to unmute yourself. Okay, while Abhishek figures it out, can Arun go next? Or can I unmute you? Okay, Diksha. Just taking some names. Don't be shy. Even if you haven't read a book, it's okay. You can say Tom and Jerry, like you can recommend a show. It's all right. It's just so that, we get a flavor of the kind of person that, you are. That's all. I see Jamuna. Jamuna, would you like to go next?
Yeah. Hi, Isaac. Hi, everyone.
Hey,
Hi.
yes.
So this is Jamuna. I'm an assistant professor in microbiology. I'm teaching in JSS Mysore, and I have been reading the Song of the Cell.
Oh, it's the
I'm
crowd's
working on
favorite
tumor
today.
microbiome, and so I was also working on CAR T cells. So that's how I came into reading the Siddharth Mukherjee's book. It's a very nice read. It tells about the basics and until how the immunotherapy has been developed. So I think I would suggest everyone to read it. But I heard Swati or someone else was also talking about the same.
Yep, that's right. All right.
And
So
this
we
is
have,
my first book club. I mean, attending a first journal club. So I'm
I
excited
think,
to be.
thank you. Thank you for joining. So we have KP. Don't see your full name, but in case you'd like to go next.
Yeah, hi. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Hey, hi. Hi, Isaac. Hi, everyone. Good evening. So I'm calling in from Bangalore, and yeah, I think my all-time favorite book is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just can't think of any other book that combines sci-fi and comedy. I mean, it's hard to get and philosophy. So that's my all-time favorite. I think a book that I read recently that got me interested in this genre is Outlived by Peter Attia. Uh, Heard a bunch of podcasts from Peter Attia and Dr. Huberman as well. So that's got me interested in this subject. I've been reading up a bit about it. So hence thought of joining this session and see what comes up. Excited
Sure.
to be here.
Thank you for joining. And
I'm
so we
actually reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy now. So can we have like a book club on that next?
have anytime. I think it's such a classic. So Meghna, if you can hear us, could you just quickly give us an intro?
Hi, I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Hi everyone. I am Meghna. I am based out of Bangalore. I work at NASCOM. I work with deep tech startups and supporting them in various capacities. And a book I would recommend. I'm in the current read that is Moong over microchips. It's a story about a techie who turns into an organic farmer in the 2000s, right when we didn't have YouTube, Google. So it's a story about how he goes about figuring out farming and experimenting and being successful in it. So it's a really good read.
Moon over microchips, did you say?
Moong dal, like the moong.
Moong over
Yeah.
microchips. Okay. All right. Now I see the
Yes.
connect. Okay. Shekhar Bio, can you hear us? And if you can just share your recommendation and name, like what you do. Okay, moving on. Swati. Swati, we've already spoken. Jalak, you have to go next.
Yeah, I'm Jalak Mehta, and okay, I think now is this better now?
Yes, yes, it is.
Yeah, I'm Jalak Mehta, and I'm a science communicator. I joined Longevity India as the community outreach coordinator. And one book that is my favorite is The Brief History of Time. It's a book by Stephen Hawking where he talks everything from Big Bang to black holes.
Got it. Who else is yet to go? Amrit, I see you as well. Hello again.
I think Amrut is traveling, so he's
Okay,
put his intro on the chat
got it.
box and also the book.
Okay, I think we have mostly gone around the table, but if anyone's not spoken, wants to speak, please feel free. Minnow, have
We
you, are
have
you there?
Sindhu.
Screeching sound.
Yeah, there's an error on my system. So we have Sindhu
Okay.
is what I think. I think
Okay,
she's left.
Sindhu, yeah, Sindhu, if you can speak a couple of
Hi,
words as well.
can
Hi.
you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. So I'm a biochemist. I work for a health and wellness platform called Project Serotonin. Yeah, the latest book that I have read is Outlive by Peter Attia. I think I can
Okay.
recommend it to everyone. But otherwise, I'm a big fan of Malcolm Gladwell.
Okay.
I think, yeah. So I like his unique perspective on from all topics, from psychology to economics to, yeah, everything.
All right. Okay, thank you, everyone. I think we're just about at 15 minutes. Let's begin with the core subject. So the way I was thinking we could do this, and the way I've done this a little bit in the past, is normally instead of going through a book summary, which just becomes like, very structured and layered, the way I thought we could do this, firstly, how many of people have read Why We Die from this call, or are like somewhere in the middle of it? That's also fine. How many of them are there so that, I know the number of contributors? Okay, so Suramya has. I see Sindhu nodding as well. So Sindhu, I'm going to count you in. So that's all right. And I think what I wanted to do is first section, I think we can all sort of just talk about an aspect of the book that made you aware about something you didn't know or you found it fascinating, right? In no particular order. And I'll sort of kick it off. So that was one. The second bit that I would like to do is, given that all of you are so so closely involved with this space of longevity, I think it'll be great to tie it with the second part of the book about what are some of the promising, researches that are happening in terms of specific methodologies, that are, kind of getting a lot of interest and attention, both from a research side, funding side, whichever side, right? I think we can talk a little bit about that, and that will pretty much cover what the book is. There's also a third part of the book, which is actually about what happens if longevity becomes a reality. And that's obviously like a bit of a prophetic and somewhere between doomsday and doomsday predictions and prophesizing what the future could look like. I think we'll leave that part out because that's more like speculation. So I thought we could focus on the first two parts in our own ways and whatever we know. Is that fine? And if there's anything else that anybody else wants to contribute, so please feel free. So I see a thumbs up. So here's why. So I've read Lifespan, I've read Outlive, I've read this now, read a bunch of stuff on neurodegenerative stuff as well. I think one of the things that really interested me about Why We Die is actually the background of the author. He was actually one of the folks who did not have anything to sell, and he calls it out very early in the book that I have skin in the game in knowing where this goes, but I don't have any skin in the game, compared to, let's say, a David Sinclair or even a Dr. Peter Attia, who's, of course, phenomenal book. But I think both of them come from places wherein they are privately running a business on the side and hence have, some kind of a gray area between what they are promoting and, what they are writing about. And I felt that distinction was a very necessary voice in this space, which sort of brought a neutrality to the subject amid all the research and all the advanced work that is going in there. So I found that like pretty fascinating. The other bit, and at least in my head, the book had like three parts, right? One was all about human evolution, how cells work, why we die, etc., is actually covered in the first part. The second part is actually about why there is reason for us to believe in the future, and the third part is this prophesizing about what the future will look like if longevity, human life form extension, really becomes a reality. In the first part specifically, a fact that I did not know at all was that we've lived for millions and millions of years, and our lifespan has only doubled in the last, 150 years. So in my head, I thought that, human lifespan extension from, let's say, 20 to 80 would have happened in a linear progression. But it's almost like we were stuck at a lifespan of 40 for like the longest time. And then we had a step function jump in the last 150 years. And obviously that itself is one really data-led reason to sort of say that, hey, something could really change in the next, 50 to 100 years. If one step function jump has happened, such drastically, imagine what that step function would look like if we suddenly go from 80 to 160, right? So I think those couple of bits were pretty fascinating to me. But yeah, maybe we can go around the table, and Suramya, like, you can share what you thought was really interesting about the book, or something that you did not know about before you came across this.
I mean, I absolutely agree with you, and you've already covered like 5 different points that I had to say. That I found it extremely balanced. Like the fact that he's a scientist and he didn't have any skin in the game particularly, and just to write a book on a topic that is so controversial in terms of there's a side that's saying that, oh my God, we need to do this, or the other side which is saying this is not needed. So that bringing out the balance and also calling out people who are selling bullshit, to be honest, it was very important, and I think it was needed. And he mentions in a couple of places that, okay, this is an amazing technology, but you have to know that, you don't really know what this technology will lead to. So it's necessary for you to first understand this and then go ahead and start selling it to people, or offering it or promising it to people that this is going to be game changing. So that is something that I really liked. I have a couple of notes that I made while reading the book, but they're all like related to multiple different things. But specifically for this point that you asked, instead of like, I mean, if I say that there was something related to the science that I didn't know, I should probably not be here in India. But yeah, I think one of the points that I want to bring out is that in one of the chapters he talks about the rapamycin and TOR inhibitors, right? So there he's mentioned specifically that TOR inhibitors are also very potent immunosuppressants, right? And this was found in when they were looking for TB drugs. And this becomes a very important thing to make note of, especially in an Indian context. And this is what I wanted to highlight in this meeting also. People left, right, center have been claiming that rapamycin is a wonder drug. It is an amazing drug. It might really be amazing in a country which is which is probably freezing half the time of the year. But in a country like India, which is a tropical country where you have so many infectious diseases, there is TB is at the height, right? We still don't have any particular drugs that will target TB. So in a country like that, if people start looking to the West and the drugs that come out of the West, especially these inhibitors, then you really need to take caution on how, if you're using this and which environment you're living in, you have to know the repercussions of that. And I know, and even he mentions it in the book, right, that he knows a lot of people who are quietly snacking on rapamycin. And even we know a lot of people who are quietly snacking on rapamycin, but they don't really know what they're taking, live in a country like ours. So this is something that we need to go deeper into the science of. So that's something that I found really interesting that he really highlighted in this book of his. And other points I have here and there that we can take as we go forward. So that's something that I wanted to share.
Thank you. Anyone else who's read the book or in the middle of it has got something fascinating to share from the book? Sindhu, or anyone else? If not, maybe, sort of, Suramya, you and I can just continue the discussion for some time. But Sindhu, do you have something that you'd like to add?
Yeah. For me, the most fascinating thing was the social implications that he dwelled on of extending lifespan, about the how do you say, the evolutionary necessity of dying, of why it is a necessity. So that those were the parts that were most interesting to me. And also he dwells upon the reasons that why we cannot extend lifespan just as it. He gives the examples of these the heart rate. He compares the different animals and their heart rates, and then I think those were the those were sort of eye-opening, something that I had not thought about, or yeah.
Yeah. And in fact, for those who have not read the book, here is a really interesting analogy to just sort of get you interested in the book, okay? Which is the fact that there is this particular graph, which is about how our number of years that we live is actually almost like directly correlated to the mass that we possess as a being. And typically, longevity, the heavier the being, the more chances of lifespan extension. So the Greenland shark and the blue whale actually live for like quite a few number of years. And he sort of plotted it on a longevity quotient. The interesting thing about where human beings lie on that spectrum is that human beings actually are supposed to have not lived this longer. So they have a very sort of, great longevity quotient by almost a factor of 5. So that's a pretty good one. So if you just lie on that line, you're essentially 1:1. But the moment you are like sort of going above that, vertical line, it means basically you're punching above your weight. And obviously, this has been brought about the fact that, medical advancements, etc., we've figured out how to, prolong life. But I thought that was, again, Sindhu, to your point, just linked to the fact that of course, we think of us as humans as being like the only thing for which longevity should apply. But when you compare across us as, everything else in the universe, you realize that, hey, there are other people who are also like punching above the weight or sort of falling somewhere on the spectrum. So any interesting thoughts there, Suramya? I think you've been in this a little bit longer than I have. But is this like a topic of discussion? Yeah, or Sindhu, either of you.
One point, you can course correct the conversation if I'm digressing, but then recently there was this report, right? Very recently, that the life expectancy, the average life expectancy has actually plateaued out. It is not as, somehow when I read that, I sort of related to what this graph that he had in the book, that we're already doing so well. I mean, at least that's what that's one way of interpreting it.
Yeah.
That was a point that I I would have liked to discuss.
Yeah, it's actually not gonna. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so to add to your point, Isaac, so like you said, there's been a lot of progress in terms of medical innovations. There is better medicine now. There's improved sanitation. There's better nutrition that we have access to. So evolutionary, there's a place in the book that he also mentions, earlier you had to go out and hunt for food. Now the maximum that you have to walk is to the refrigerator. So you don't really have to make any efforts to get your food anymore. And so there's this constant phenomena of feasting, and food is always in excess for us right now. So some of the reasons why this life expectancy has also increased is all of these factors combined together. But then there's also a very interesting statistic that, talks about that even if you cure all of the diseases, including cancer, heart disease, everything, you will not be able to extend lifespan more than 8 to 10 years maximum. Yeah. That's it. You go out and you cure all of these diseases. That means that there's a fundamental lack of understanding in the science behind aging and how we age and what actually changes in the body, not just with respect to disease, but just the normal physiology, how it changes. So that's a very important point that he also brings out in this book somehow.
Yeah, Madhur, I saw a raised hand. We welcome questions. Like we can just sort of keep it, free flowing for the next 10 minutes, and then we'll pause and then, go to Swati's section. She's got something that she'd like to cover on actually the science of aging as well. So yeah, Madhur, go ahead.
No, that's a great format. I just wanted to add 2 more threads that I liked so that wherever it goes.
Yes, please.
One was initially in the book, he keeps, you get a sense that, organism is just trying to balance between, okay, we can get cancer or we can get aging. We can get cancer. And it's like, right. That ride which is going on. And which he also talks about how it applies for any new molecules or anything that you're trying to put in your body, that, okay, what will it give you? Maybe it solves cancer, but gives you aging. Maybe it solves aging, but gives you cancer. I really like that. And second, there was this whole chapter called Recycling the Garbage. I really like that chapter because there is I don't think there is so much conversation about how proteins and different things are recycled in the body. There is, the general opinion is, okay, let's eat as much as protein as we can, and let's load it up, and it's almost like a very consumerist thing where you can just keep buying, keep adding more things, and but he talks really so much about how it's really difficult. In fact, somewhere he mentions that if you have too much of garbage, then body sort of stops synthesizing a lot of new proteins. I might be inaccurate here, but something to that effect, that he writes that, okay, so the recycling is very important. And for me, sort of that reminds to, there's this song, Kabir song, which is about Chadariya Jini, which is ki how can you get the cloth and just try to keep it as clean as possible, not mess it up. So yeah, just wanted to add those two threads also.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing. Swati, I see a raised hand from you as well. Yeah, please do share what you have in mind.
Actually, I have not read the book, but I was seeing recently a Venki's YouTube video where he described the book. So you guys talked about this life expectancy and the graph that you showed. So he showed that in the slide and he was talking. And then I think the stats and all are good, but life expectancy is something very relative term. So if you're in a coma, like in a coma-like state and in ventilator indefinitely, you're increasing your life, right? But are you really living? So that's the question when I have means it's just an open thread, people can contribute onto it. And then he was giving one example of a French woman who used to have means 2 or 3 cigarettes a day and have a chocolate and whiskey every day, and she lived for 122 years. And that's the maximum we have seen in after 1997 she died. We have not found a case of women live, or a man or woman or anyone has crossed that 122-year age limit. So we talk about these, scientific therapies and this epigenetics or genomics or protein metabolic pathway. So much we talk about, and we are like, okay, if we figure out this, maybe then we will live bit longer, and maybe longevity, or maybe living living. We don't want to live indefinitely, like a immortal creature. But obviously, what we want exactly is we want to slow down our aging so that when we are at the end years of our life, we don't have to depend much. We still have our independence. So that's where the term get little bit murky, because people consider longevity that if we are putting something out there in the market, that will make them immortal, or something that will is a short way to live. But there has been exceptions, and biology is always about exceptions. The good things always come out of exceptions. So we should always be open to the idea that maybe we can add too much, and in the scientific literature, and we can bring too many drugs and we can talk about it, and many things can come up in future. Technology is evolving every day, but checkpoints are necessary. Checkpoints like till where we can go and till what we can achieve. And it's like you reach for, you cannot go for moon but reach for stars, but actually stars are way more far than the moon. So moon is still in our capacity to go, but stars are still very much far if we talk about scientifically. So here I would like to add that we should be ethically sound in that manner, if as a researchers or as a contributors or clinicians or a corporate people who are working in this field, everyone in longevity environment should be ethical, sensible, that what is the limit until where we could go, and resources can be used in much better way. So I guess Venki's book was a big example, and the way he talks about it in a general public platform also, he tries to tell to these people that it's good that attaining longevity is like going to Mars, but colonizing it is a whole different scenario. So this stuff, like, just open for discussion, just for some thought that came.
Oh, great. It's a great, and I know, Surabhi, you're looking to sort of add to that. Yeah, please do.
I actually raised my hand when you talked about longevity, being you can be on a ventilator and you can live for as long as you want. So, it will keep adding to your age.
Yeah.
So I read a very funny article. It wasn't funny, actually, it was eye-opening. An article came out talking about the blue zones, and it highlighted that some of the people in the blue zones who are recorded as centenarians are actually not centenarians. They've died and nobody has claimed their death certificates. So on paper, they're alive, but they're not really centenarians. So that was one funny point that came into my mind. And on to the second point, actually, I opened the page where Venki talks about this. I'll actually read that line. It's very funny because he calls them the immortality merchants of today, the researchers who propose trying to extend life indefinitely, and the billionaires who fund them are really a modern take on the prophets of the old, promising a long life, largely free of the fear of encroaching old age and death. So, who would have this life? The tiny fraction of the population who can afford it? What would be the ethics of treating or modifying humans to achieve this? And if it becomes widely available, what sort of society would we have? Would we be sleepwalking into the future without considering the potential social, economic, and political consequences of humans living well beyond our current lifespans? So, this is the point which brings out the entire summary of what we were talking about, because I think
Yeah.
longevity, sustainability, everything goes hand in
Hmm.
hand, where you have a planet with finite resources, and you really
Mhm.
have to think that if you're going to be living longer. And now there's not only a push for life extension at, beyond 100, but there's also a push for increasing the fertility rates and the birth rates. But naturally, what you've been seeing is declining birth rates and people, dying out of age-related diseases. But if you have a push in both of the segment, that means that you're going to increase the population rapidly. And then how are you going to live with,
Manage it. Yeah.
how are you going to deal with
Deal with
all
it.
those
Yeah.
with finite number of resources?
I wanted to
Very
leave a tip
tangential.
on this note for people who are yet to read the book, which is what's a good place to start. So, and trust me, this is a bit of a dense read, especially if you're not a molecular biologist, right? So one suggestion I have for everyone who's looking forward to, let's say, maybe picking this up after, is to actually begin with the chapter which says crackpots versus prophets. Okay, it's an extremely like relatable. Obviously, the the title itself is interesting, but the reason why I'm saying begin with that is because he almost takes like 2, 3 different points of view on longevity and mixes a bit of what Swati was saying, and sort of to your point that some things are misreported, people have vested interests, etc., and sort of just really lays it down on a in a very layman's language. And I think that's a good, probably, like if I had to read the book again, I would begin from there, because otherwise it could get a little intimidating. But thankfully we've got a bunch of scientists here, so we should in maybe 5, 6 minutes go towards the science part of it. Anything else about the book that anyone else wants to highlight? And even if it's, let's say, not about this book specifically, but let's say in the space of longevity, are there any? And I have a question for the group, by the way, but I just want to leave like the floor open for maybe 1 or 2 more comments before I go to my question. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Sindhu. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just have one question in my mind. I'm not sure
Yeah.
if this is the platform also, like, because we have a very specific topic today for discussing
Sure.
the book. Like, have you wondered why? Because when we talk about longevity, we are basically trying to tackle what everyone else is doing, right? Because unless we solve cardiovascular diseases, cancer, and neurodegenerative diseases, there's not going to be longevity. These have to be tackled. So
Yep.
why do you think this sudden spurt in activities around this? Like, why this new coin a term? It's basically we are doing the same things as which has been happening always. But why, this suddenly a new impetus into this kind of? I mean, this is more the terminology thing, is what I.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
It's a slightly maybe speculative answer. None of us would know. But I also want to take a question from Jamuna. And then maybe let's collect all the questions and then sort of let the group address it one by one. But Jamuna, please go ahead. I think you had a question.
Yeah, like I wanted to tell about this, like longevity. It's not just longevity. I think we should also focus more on healthy aging, right? So that would be a better perspective. Like what Swati was also telling, the same thing, right? Instead of living long on a ventilator or in a
Yeah.
ill state, we can focus on seeing to that we are gracefully and aging in a healthy manner. So like we were working on a project which was also the focus area was healthy aging.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, health span and longevity, I mean, from the little I know of this space, I believe that some companies are holding on to longevity. Some have moved to this thing called health span. So I think these are all interrelated topics. Sindhu, to your point in terms of why this new term when we still have not solved for Alzheimer's, cancer, etc., completely speculative. But my take is, I think, like you always have a world wherein, people will always work on the most audacious ideas. I think today the most audacious idea is actually life extension. And if I look at the patterns of where the tech billionaires are pumping their money in, I think they need, for them, cancer, probably, like 120,000 people are solving for it, right? But longevity, all said and done, very, very few people are solving for it. And it's a really, really audacious bet. So I think it's a bit of, I don't know, maybe a social signaling kind of a thing. Plus, obviously, the fact that if they get it right, it's great for humanity. Like, I mean, at least that's the thesis. But that's my thesis. But anyone else has a comment, please feel free to, add on. Go ahead, Saramya.
Yeah, so I actually had an answer to Sindhu's question. So what we've been doing with other diseases is tackling the disease in isolation. What longevity has been trying to do, the longevity industry per se, is there are two facets. One is the life extension side of things, where people are working on how do you extend the life of human beings and also pets in some cases. And the second part is to understand the basic science behind aging. So when you go and try and read about the basic changes that happen in the body as we age, they're very different from a young individual and also how you study diseases per se. Historically, people have studied diseases and clinical trials have happened in people, which are less than 60 years of age, and they are primarily younger individuals. But bodies of older individuals are much different at a cellular level, at a physiological level. They're very different, and the fact that we don't know much about them itself opens up a whole new avenue for research where just the basic molecular mechanisms in these individuals are very different. How drugs react in these individuals are very different. The basic molecular pathways are also changing. That's why you have diseases labeled as age related diseases, because they will only develop in aged bodies. They will develop when the so-called environment for them is very rich for these diseases to actually grow. A very classic example is, I think, one of the papers recently published by a professor in our team is Ramre, and he talks about how cancer cells actually like aged cell matrices more to latch on to and then migrate. So aged cells themselves, or so-called senescent cells, have these very rich matrix onto which cancer cells latch on and then they migrate faster, which explains that, older bodies are different from younger bodies and cancer will itself show itself differently in older individuals. So the longevity industry is not only about talking about extension, it's also about understanding the whole science and all the changes that are happening inside the body. So that's why also the buzz which has been created, and it's just recently come into India, but the West has made significant progress in understanding so the geroscience side of things and also the entire lifestyle extension. But we are more focused on the geroscience bit of things, where we try to understand the molecular pathways and how young is different from old, and can you identify how they are different and maybe make use of that information.
That's a great
So I had
distinction.
one.
So yeah, please go ahead, Swati.
So I had one comment. So Surama explained it very well from the scientific point of view. But Sindhu, your question is very much valid. That why suddenly, like we had these issues before also, and why? So a small word, influence. So we are so much what we have seen in the prior generations, the suffering and finding proper, treatment for certain stuff, and how at 40 and 50 itself people die off very fast and before they even reach to the hospital. And now people are selling wonder drugs, that can cure you, or if you take this supplement right now, after 50 years, you won't get Alzheimer, Parkinson, dementia. And if you, it's like you eat apple every day and you keep a doctor away, but now they have given different scientific terms to that apple. So I guess that is a social factor in that, because we all as a aware generation wants to live a little bit longer and have a healthy lifestyle and be active at our 90s also and 70s also. And that's why billionaires like that guy, I forgot his name, who Brian, I guess, who transferred his plasma from his son to be younger. So that kind of stuff is
Brian Johnson.
happening. Yeah. So that kind of stuff is happening. So maybe that's the one important reason. Scientific questions are very important, which Suramya told, they are very important for why we should research on these age-related these diseases, and why it is very important to look into it in a molecular way, not just like a business way, and just to put some products out in Amazon and eBay and for them to buy, which Venki also talks about. There are a lot of non-FDA approved supplements. But social aspect, I'll say we are all influenced in such a way that we want to remain fit as longer as we can. That's something ingrained in our generation. We have seen our mothers, grandmothers struggling, or fathers, grandfathers struggling, and we don't want the same thing for us. So I think that's my just a social or philosophical take on that. Maybe someone might have a better answer.
So I think we've discussed a few answers to this. I'll just add my question because I think this is the bit wherein, I think there are different points of view. So, and I think everyone will be familiar with this question. I think we have enthusiasts, we have researchers, we have scientists. So should aging be classified as a disease or should it not be? I'd love to hear a couple of points of view on this one, because obviously there is a group which thinks that aging should be a disease. They're speaking to WHO. WHO is still sort of keeping it at bay. It kind of is a segue to what I think Suramya, Sindhu, Swati, all of you are talking. So the logical extension. So maybe like a 30-second response from anybody who wants to take a stab at it. And I honestly don't know, right? I'm a bit on the outsider, so I don't again like Venki. I don't have a like dog in this fight, but yeah, I would love to know how is the community thinking about this particular topic, which is really dividing lines. Have I
Anybody
stirred a
wants to go
hornet's
first?
nest?
I've been talking for a very long time. No, I have a very clear answer. So
Okay. KP, maybe KP, you can start. I see your raised hand. You haven't spoken. Yeah.
Hey, hi. Yeah,
Hi.
the raised hand was not for the question, but I had another question, but then
Sure, no problem. Please add to it. No problem.
yeah, I mean the question that I had was and maybe I'll ask my question. I'll give my 2 cents on your question, right? So the question that I had is that if let's say there is a concerted effort and we are able to increase lifespan by a decent amount. I mean, other than, of course, people living longer, are there second or third order impacts of a larger population living for so long? One is, of course, we'll be consuming more of the resources of the earth, etc. But are there other social, cultural, probably other impacts that might happen, which today we are not considering, right? Because you're going to have a significantly older population living for a lot longer, consuming more of the resources, but then you'll also be having the middle-aged people, the younger people, etc., who will also be kind of. So I'm just wondering, is that going to change the social, cultural fabric of the society as we know it today? Because we are living in a society where, like you rightly said, right, the age expectancy has not really changed over the last probably multiple decades, right? So, are there other second, third order impacts of which maybe we're not seeing right now, and maybe that's the question I had.
No,
But yeah,
actually, Venki has an entire chapter on this, KP. And interestingly, it doesn't say a yes or no answer. The chapter is titled as a question. The chapter is, should we live forever? So it's almost like a hypothetical, philosophical question that he goes in. But Madhur, I saw your hand raised. So you want to respond to that? You're on mute.
So I was just having this discussion with some visitors that we have from France, and they were talking about how in their country there's a political question of the retirement age being pushed forward, and people don't like it because they want to retire, but now the government's saying you have to work for 5 years more. And I think what KP you're pointing out, I take a jump in longevity as a given with my generation, that it's at least a 5-10 year period is going to happen no matter what, especially for India, because we are going to get all the technological advancement and everything that's happening, which might have happened for the West, but for us it's going to happen now. And so I am thinking in a way like I'm already going to live 10 or 20 years longer, which might mean that I'm expected to work and produce and be productive longer. So for me, longevity and health span is like a basic need that, okay, if this is not figured out, then am I walking around with certain diseases, but I'm still living longer and I'm expected to earn, I have to pay taxes. So for me, this science is like, okay, it has to happen somehow. And And the second order effect, I think it's always like, I used to think that, why so much fuss about going to the moon? But when you develop for space travel, you develop 100 other things on the bottom of it. So I think that anyway happens. And for me, my perception has been that the longevity and health span, these two words in the media I am exposed to, is already merged. Like they're no longer two separate things. It's almost the similar thing that, yeah.
Got it. But Suramya, Swati, Sindhu, maybe some of you can respond to, should aging be classified as a disease? I just want to hear some voices in terms of how the
No.
community thinks about it.
So
No, short answer.
No? Okay.
So yeah, actually, so I was reading an article about Japan. So you guys might have heard the older population is higher in Japan and the younger population is very less. And it's causing a lot of stress on the younger population, which is working. Because see, when you have less people employed, so you have a lot of work. So it just makes sense. It's a math. So they were talking about that how their culture is also very slow. The younger people are not accepting the culture because it's very much defined by the boundaries of older people. And if there is no change in the hierarchy, so it will stay like that. And that's why they are saying that why they are behind US and Russia and why and China and why they are not dominating right now in sense of technology and a lot of stuff. And I still believe that Japan is very good in technology. So yeah, aging, you cannot say it's a disease. Means I am also in a fence with that answer. I'm not a clear-cut person who believes yes or no because I still have to read through and I still have to outlook changes. So, but still, I believe that right now it's not a disease. But as Madhu talked about that, if when you are looking for moon, so you find several other different stuff. So maybe even if we classify it as a disease, people will pay more attention to the actual disease, like which are uh, because of aging, due to aging, or which causes aging, like Alzheimer's, Parkinson, dementia, different type of dementias. People still don't know that. Venki also talked about that Alzheimer is a prion disease or a protein misfolding disease. There are a lot of terms, or maybe it's infectious. We don't know. A lot of stuff has been not known. So more light will be shed. So from my personal term, no, it's not a disease because everything has to age and die off. But it has a limit. Everything has a limit to it. But yeah, it should be treated as a disease for some kind of development in the medical and the scientific field. So people pay attention more. And I think all strata of community should be benefited out of it. So that's my take on it. And it's very 50-50. And I am welcome any other opinions also.
No, fair. I think some of us are still making the mind. I mean, I'm definitely in that camp. I read David Sinclair's book and I was so convinced that, oh, it should be a disease. And then, you read this perspective and like, maybe not so soon. So, it's obviously, yeah. So, I know you're wanting to say something.
Yeah, I have a couple of points leading up to my answer of no, why aging should not be a disease. It's because, first of all, the definition of a disease says that, you should know what causes it. You should have a clear indicator or a marker of the disease. For example, dengue fever is caused by dengue virus, and this is the mechanism or something of that sort, right? And it is marked by you list XYZ symptoms. For aging, you don't have any particular known direct linear cause known. Okay, there are multiple mechanisms which will feed into it. So it shows kind of it shows it's like an inevitable fate, but there's no clear linear path saying that this will lead to aging. Okay, that's one point. Second, it needs to have a very defined marker. There is no defined marker of aging. There are multiple different markers that people use, right from the cellular level all the way to an organismal and also a population level. People use multiple things to assess, okay, this is aged or not aged, right? The other thing is that when you think about aging, you start aging right probably from the minute that not even from the minute that you're born, from the minute that you're probably a zygote, okay, or just like that fertilized egg. The cells start dividing and then they start aging right at that point. So like the entire concept of 60 plus is a senior citizen is a societal construct. Okay, so you've created boundaries on your own saying that okay, beyond this you are aged, you probably should not work, go retire and do whatever you want to. and now you want to push that limit to XYZ. Whereas when an individual is healthy and they're capable of performing, working way beyond their 60 limit, where 75, 80 they can still work. There nobody thinks of aging as a disease, right? There you're functioning normal and very productive in society, or very, I'm not going to take the name, but politics is a very great example of that, right? So there you don't want to talk about aging as a disease. So when the question comes to me saying that is aging a disease, then what? When you're a child, are you young, and then like right from your 20s, are you an aged individual? Are you diseased all your life? It's a very philosophical question. Then is your entire life a disease? No, it's not. So it's a mechanism. It is a state of change. It is a state of constant evolving change, and something that you can also stop, and you can keep that in a kind of stasis as you reach a particular chronological number of years that you've been on this earth, right? It's just that with the number of years that you're alive on this earth, all of that catches up to you. And there are lots of theories of organismal aging, right? From accumulation of different types of cells to damage accumulation to oxidative stress. There are multiple of these theories, and it makes sense. All of them make sense, but that doesn't mean that you can classify that as a disease, because that happens in conditions when you are younger also, and you can see signs of accelerated aging in people when all of these combine together. So which is why I'm still inclined towards no, it's not a disease.
Fair.
It's a state of constant and evolving change.
Fair. So I want to throw it to Madhur, who's also raised his hand. In the meanwhile, we're almost done with the book part of the section now. But I think we've got the good fortune of having like a bunch of scientists, molecular biologists, and people working in different aspects. So if you have any questions that you were ever curious about this subject, I'll come to you, but keep them open. But Madhur, first you.
I want to say that it should not be a disease. Maybe like I want to have that imperative, because keeping the science aside, if you declare it as a disease, the business and the legal side of it becomes very unhealthy, I think, because first of all, the business would love it because it will open up the insurance money, right? Which you cannot. If it's a disease, then I can claim insurance on it. And the second is the products of anti-aging. With a disease like aging, then have to be sold to everybody. It's like vaccination, right?
And regulations will also go up, right? Like today, a lot of things can go under the radar, but yeah, it's got a double-edged sword.
True.
Yeah, go ahead.
True.
I just thought that was a very interesting aspect. Yeah.
Yeah, no, definitely. So the regulation will go up, but then it's also like, if somebody comes up with something like, hey, this, there's a parameter which makes, okay, half the population is aging. And we have something which if you give to everybody, people will slow down the aging. And just like vaccination, then everybody has to get this thing because, okay, the country cannot be aging. So I
think that's a super cool point. Just because of that point, I'd say that, okay, more money into aging, let's classify it as a disease. But yeah, universal treatments for all.
Oh, fair. Yeah, so anyone who's just sort of, KP is just dropping off, that's all right. I think we really had a very rich discussion. I think there were a few voices, but I saw that whoever joined at the beginning still continued. And I think that's not a bad sign for a first chapter of the book club. Any thoughts to wrap up this, or any other questions that you all have? Yeah, go ahead, Saramya.
Yeah, actually, I have a small section for Swati to cover because I think this is super important. So there's a whole chapter on resetting the biological clock where he talks about epigenetics a lot. And epigenetics is something which is not very well understood by people. And he talks about how epigenetic changes seem to occur at a timetable. Only when they're needed, they will occur. And some of these patterns can be used to make clocks that will then, define age. But I want to ask Swati to do a small deep dive into what is epigenetics first. I mean, keep it simple because I understand that not everybody wants to go into the whole methylation part of DNA. But largely because because it is very it's regulated by environment so much that a recent study came out where they did epigenetics on the same individuals across different times of the day, and then they reported that between 3 hours of gap during the day due to the activities that they were doing, their biological ages changed by 18 years. So I mean, is it even reliable to be using some of these clocks from derived from different environments, different settings, right onto an Indian context? I just want you to sort of maybe touch upon that briefly.
So yeah, it's like how aging whole itself is a gray area. So same way the epigenomics and aging is also a gray area. So just I'll give a little bit brief that what I'm talking about if someone is not familiar with the term epigenomics, but now this is a hot term and I guess most of the people might know. But something that is over above the genetic changes or genetic makeup of us. So it's something chemically regulated and it sits over our DNA and proteins or histones which keep our DNA together in our cells. And these are modified by different proteins, which are either reader or writers of these modifications. And like Suramya told, I majorly work on the methylation aspect, like methylation aspect of DNA, not just in aging, in my other stuff, other projects also that I'm dealing with. But what I've seen is the significant progress regarding the epigenetic clocks, and I'll tell you a very small, short story about it, a very funny story. So actually, the this clock was not meant for measuring biological age. So when the samples were given, actually they were to check that whether epigenomics play any role in homosexuality. So they took the samples of twin brother, one was homosexual and one was heterosexual, and they took the blood samples and they ran it and checked whether what is the methylation pattern in the DNA, like how it looks and is it different and does it play a role? And surprisingly, they did not find anything regarding it. So then the researcher who is Steve Harvard, some guys might have heard his name. So he tweaked it a little bit. So it's a machine learning tool. So where you just extract the blood and the DNA, and from DNA you profile the methylation, and methylation data you're giving to that machine learning tool. So everything that is happening is done by that deep neural network, and your hands are very much less in that analysis part. So they did he tweaked it in a such a way that it can guess the chronological age of the sample. For example, you find an unknown sample and you're just checking what is the age, whether it's a 70-year-old person or 50-year-old person. So they have to train the data set. So when they trained it, they found that it's giving like error of 2 to 5 years, and they were like, why this error is coming? Because the everything scientific part looks great and everything. Then they found that actually the DNA methylation is not telling the actual age of the person, it's telling the biological age. So according to means these experiments were done lot in twins, which their genetic makeup is a bit similar and they are in different environmental conditions, and you can see their aging is very different. So that kind of stuff. But then as the epigenetic clock idea progressed and a lot of researchers came, so some take blood samples, some take tissue samples, and they do the sequencing, find the methylation, put the data into the machine learning tool and check what is the biological age of the person. Then they correlate that whether that person has a history of diabetes or smoking or alcohol or how it's affecting this. And so you see, I cannot say that we are in that advent of technology where we can say that DNA methylation is a very good marker of biological aging. There has to be done a lot of work, and it's a human made machine learning program that we are using. So obviously there will be error rates and there will be a lot of faults. But what I believe that it can act as a checkpoint. So here I'll tell you that David Sinclair, we all know that he researches in aging a lot. So what he does, he took two mice and gave them radiation and then checked the methylation level before and after radiation. And that methylation level, then he correlated with aging, putting the data in the epigenetic clocks. They are publicly available to use. So when he found, he said after and before radiation, he's seeing a stark difference that when you give a radiation or some kind of stress to mice, the biological age is increasing. But when they are in a control situation, they're happy situation, you give them proper feed, water and everything, their DNA methylation is okay levels how it should be, and they are not seeing any kind of a different pattern or biological age change. It's similar to what's their chronological age is. So this thing came, but then Steve Harvard, who made the clock himself, and David was using his clock only, he refuted his claim. He told no. When we tried ionizing radiation in our lab with different mice models, we did not find any difference in the DNA methylation pattern. So you cannot conclude that a small term, you're giving some kind of small term stress and expecting a biological
Did
I
we
think
lose Swati?
Swati broke off for a minute.
Okay.
Sorry, my network was bad. Yeah.
Yeah.
So epigenomics, if you take it apart from the aging, uh, it's about how our lifestyle is. The better our lifestyle, the better our habits, the better our epigenome. If our epigenome is better, and why we are focusing in epigenome, not on genetic makeup or in stem cell therapy. So these are all very big words. But if you look at epigenome, it's very simpler to maintain compared to, making new stem cells and injecting into a person. You can just correct your lifestyle because epigenome is transient. Today you are in stress, maybe something is hypermethylated, some gene is hypermethylated because maybe it's needed to be for your stress response. Tomorrow you'll come back to your normal state, that gene might be hypermethylated, doesn't need to be that methylated now. So you're back at it. So this transient state is something that people find that they can exploit for the aging perspective. That now this is the magic cure, because if you can have something that you can change continuously, so if you are giving someone their biological age, you are also giving them a hope that this biological age came from your epigenome, and maybe if you do your lifestyle better, this can go down. So still, these clocks or these they have made these machine learning models. These are still have to be approved by FDA. So they have not been approved yet. But Steve Harvard, who was the inventor of this clock, he's pushing the approval, and he's also the part of company Altos. So he's pushing it, and let's see how it turns out. And I feel like a lot of research has to be done. You cannot claim anything, but if it does work, and I'm also going to be working on something similar on this way. So if it does work, it can be a beautiful checkpoint. So whatever senolytics drugs, whatever aging renewal drugs, rejuvenation drugs, or supplements guys are having, like anything people, and they're eating it without thinking that what is the consequence. And you can use this as a parameter to check that does it really affect our biological aging. But there is the question that research needs to be more refined. So there has been a lot of supporting groups that have made different clocks, and they felt the data correlated, and not just with humans. They took possum data, kangaroo data, and platypus and different animals. They checked in elephant also, blue whale also. So it's working according to them. But see, you have to check something with your own perspective. There's always an ethical side to it, that how much truth it is, and you are putting your DNA methylation data there. So if you say epigenetic is very, transient. So maybe when you're collecting the sample, something is going wrong. So that can also be a reason why your methylation levels are coming off. So there has lot to be this thing. So I'll say that epigenetic is something very simple but very difficult to play with, because it can go haywire at any time. So what I understood by looking at the epigenomic landscape of aging is that the best cure is your lifestyle. The better your lifestyle, the better your habits are, the more longer you live, the healthier you live. So if you see in any dementia patients, if you check their lifestyle, they are either taking too much stress in their younger age, or either they are not having a healthy diet, or they were malnutrition during the younger period when brain development is happening. So it's leading to the protein folding at 80 or 60 or 70 when you're forgetting everything. So yeah, that is there. And not just DNA methylation, so something called histone modification. So I told you there's a protein that hold off the DNA together in the cell and made it compact in the cells. So these histones also have some modification, some chemical group like acetyl and methyl groups will sit and decide whether a gene should be expressed or not. So now people are coming with histone clocks also. So they are assessing the levels of methylation and acetylation or modification in these histones of the person whose blood sample or liver sample or tissue sample is collected, and they're checking whether it can be used as a clock. So there is a lot of avenue in it, but I'll say to take it with a grain of salt, because everything has to be researched more. In a day, nothing comes out like that. You cannot bring a cure for cancer in a day, or of a big aging related question. But yeah, I think so it has a potential. it has a potential because it's something that can be tweaked, can be modified, and can include the heterogeneity of not just our ethnicity, but different kind of age groups and different, we have different lifestyle that has to be also included in it. And I think Venki also comment regarding it that you cannot you cannot push something to become new, but what you can do is that what you already have to make it better. So there they talked about how they were putting these factors, stem cell factors that Yamanaka discovered into normal cells to make them rejuvenated, but they were becoming cancer, they were becoming cancer like teratomas. So that's what, you cannot push something, we cannot tell, okay, you just monitor this and you put some epigenetic modifiers inside your body as a supplement and it will get better. And people are started selling that after epigenetic clock came. Now people are selling these modifiers they can have and their epigenome will get rejuvenated, but nothing like that. You can just have a healthy diet and maybe live longer. That's, I feel like, is the secret of not aging in a worse way, just to be happy, stress free. And if I talk about scientific point of view, I think there is a potential in DNA methylation. As Suramya asked that whether just a quack or just something, a debate, or does it have some future? I think it has a lot of future, but I think there should be better researchers with more ethical substance when they are working with it, and to be keep in mind that it will always not predict something right. It can give you sometimes wrong answer, and you have to consider that error rate and then move forward and then release this kind of info out in the world. Otherwise, it's very misleading. So yeah, epigenetic clock is very good. It will predict and everything, but yeah, it needs to be refined. So that's, I hope we can add something to it from our longevity initiative. So yeah,
Epigenetic
that
clock is good, but Swati has a reservation. I think that's what I
Yeah, yeah.
have
And
understood.
yeah,
Swati is the epigenetic scientist.
yeah, I am the one who's working in it, but I have a reservation. It's coming from a fair point of view. I've heard and read a lot of articles, and what I understand, you have to use it first and then you'll understand. Maybe in a year or so, if I use it, I'll let you guys know in the next book clubs that what happened and
We
what
look
I
forward to
see.
it. See, this
Yeah,
this conversation is now recorded. So, Swati, you're on
yeah.
record for posterity. Yes, Ramya, go ahead. Let's just
Yes, so
do
I
a final
thought
wrap up.
since we are final wrapping up, I thought
Yeah,
we could discuss this. I don't know why I can't see it. You can't see it. Can you see
I
it?
think you've
Can
done
you see the
some
book?
blur thing.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna
it's kind
remove
of
the
getting
blur
blurred.
first.
Yeah, here you
Yeah,
go.
yeah, here you go, the
Yeah.
book. So I just want to talk about the book cover. So like when you instantly look at it, what comes to your mind when you just look at the design of it? Like there's an hourglass and somebody's knocked it off and it's just lying there. It's got so many things to say that it's also about balance. It's about having a balanced point of view from both of the sides, but it's also about, don't worry about the time ticking out too much, just leave that hourglass and just let it be. And it's so cool that on the reverse side of it, the hourglasses are like on two opposite poles. And then you have like one side of the field versus the other side of the field. So if you look at it from that point of view, I would just say that before reading the book, maybe think about those
The
points
cover.
as well. And for wrapping up, I had just one final thing to read out, which got me into a lot of philosophical thinking about, oh my God, which field are we working in, and is this really what we not think about? So on, I think the page 4 of the book, he talks about that. Nevertheless, most of us do not live in constant existential angst about our mortality. Rather, our brains appear to have evolved a protection mechanism by thinking of death as something that happens to other people and not ourselves. A separation of the dying reinforces this delusion. Because unlike the past, when we were confronted by people dying all around us, today people often die in care homes and hospitals, isolated from the rest of the population. And as a result, most of us, especially young people, go about their daily lives acting as though we are immortal. Unfortunately, we are not. So that's something to think about as we leave this book club.
Nice. That's a good note. By the way, there is this one anecdote. If you guys know Yudhishthir's, Yaksha Prashna, are you guys familiar? So the
Yes.
thing that, and again, it just goes back to what Suramya said. The Yaksha asks Yudhishthir, it's a wonderful read, like 50 questions all about wisdom. What's the most wonderful thing about man? Obviously, like encompassing both genders, not being sexist, just like want to call that out. But basically, he says that, the fact that he can die any moment, but he lives as if he's going to live forever. That's the most surprising thing about humanity, man. But anyway, thanks everyone for sort of doing this. Really enjoyed the energy, the back and forth. Swati, thanks for your piece on epigenetics. I think it deserves. I think if there were more people, I'm sure they would have wanted to go deeper on quite a lot of the things that you said, and I think we should maybe just do another, because some of the inhibiting TOR pathways, etc. Like I don't understand that completely. I just like understanding very uber. So maybe that's a spin-off to another session sometime in the future. So thanks everyone.
Interaction. Yeah, it was a great
Really
interaction for me
appreciate it.
also. Yeah.
Thanks for being there, Jalak, Suramya. Thanks for kicking it off.
Thank you so much for moderating, Isaac. This
Not
is
at all.
we really needed somebody to take the initiative on this one. Jalak, you're saying something. Should we take a picture?
Yeah, I've taken some screenshots, but I was just taking a moment to thank Isaac for like taking the time out and moderating so wonderfully. And like being a reader, I think you brought like both passion and expertise to our discussion. And not just Isaac, thanks to Swati, thanks to Saramya, thanks to everybody who added their insights. I think it made a wonderful discussion and a great start to our book club. So I will be posting about the next book, next meeting on the WhatsApp group so that people who couldn't attend can still vote in and try to join us next time.
And thank you listening. I think thank you for all the listeners who are also like tuned in. I think the fact that you stayed back, thank you, really means a lot. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. If you want to join our WhatsApp community, just follow any of our social media. The links are all there.
Done. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.